Reaper. The most recognizable villain in Overwatch. One of the coolest designed characters in the game that can be extremely powerful. But he wasn't always this way. He was once a hero and helped bring the world to peace after the war with the Omnics. So, grab a snack and a drink, because today we're going to take a look at the rise and fall of Gabriel Reyes, the Reaper. Gabriel was born in LA, California, and lived with his mother and father. He was very athletic and intelligent as a child and wanted to go into law enforcement once he was done with school. He would join the LAPD and participate in many violent crime arrests. Despite rising to the rank of detective quickly and all the hard work he was putting in, the crime rate would never fall, leading him to believe there was more at play. Later in his 20s, he would enlist in the United States Army and did extremely well, eventually becoming known as Mustang. Working his way to senior officer quickly, he helped take down a number of authoritarian regimes. But right before his eyes, there were mega corporations taking control and repeating the same issues to maximize profits. He would also take part in a number of extraction missions, but mostly he would extract and they'd be handed off to another party to be dealt with. Later in his career, he would become involved in national security. Soon, he would receive a position in the nation's Soldier Enhancement Program. This was a program where scientists would work with soldiers and turn them into perfect weapons, with augmented superhuman speed, strength, and agility. He would be given the name Soldier 24. He would still be part of the enhancement program when the Omnic crisis would start. He would help coordinate multiple early advances in response to the attacks from Anubis and fought against the idea that all large urban meetings be given to Anubis. Unfortunately, it was during one committee meeting that Gabriel would learn that both of his parents would be killed in an attack on LA. He would fall into depression after this and blame the tactical decisions he was part of for the loss of his parents. He continued to train as part of the Soldier Enhancement Program, but would noticeably become more unfocused. Reyes would not interact with much of his comrades, until one came along, Jack Morrison, who was designated as Soldier 76. Morrison was hazed and called a coward for joining the program late, but Reyes would not be one of those people. He could see Morrison's quiet determination and saw it would carry him through the enhancement program. They would become friends quickly. Eventually, the program would end, and the two would emerge as super soldiers, along with a small number of candidates who had survived the enhancement program. They returned to combat before they were officially announced to the rest of the world, and Reyes' first recorded action as a super soldier was at the Battle of Echo Park, where he saved thousands of lives and drove the invading Omnics back to Glendale. As the war raged on and governments failed to neutralize the Omnic threat, the UN were busy forming an international task force under the name Overwatch. Reyes and Morrison were both on the list of prospective members. Reyes, while not being the first to be approached, would be the first to accept to lead its strike team, meaning he was the first person to officially join the Overwatch team and would be its first strike commander, a role he was not too pleased to be in but saw it as necessary. Morrison would be recruited as its second member and Anna Amari as its third. The trio would take part in various operations in places like Rio, but at this point, the stresses of being a leader were starting to chip away at Reyes. After the Omnic crisis, Morrison would be given the position of Strike Commander by the UN, the first official commanding officer of Overwatch. Reyes was overlooked for the role, with him being seen as too rogue and having a maverick leadership style. Anna would also feel that Reyes was overlooked by Gabrielle Adawe, as she felt Morrison looked the part of a war hero and could improve the group more than Reyes could. Reyes was actually relieved by this. He would rather be number 2, instead of being the face of the organization and having to deal with the political position. Not long after the end of the crisis, he would meet a woman named Martina while on leave in Mexico. They would go on to marry and have a son. Reyes would become the eventual leader of Overwatch's Blackwatch unit, due to it being more stealthy and covert, which Reyes was well suited for. A sting operation would take place and result in the capture of one of the Deadlock Gang's leaders, Cole Cassidy. Impressed by the marksmanship of the outlaw, Reyes would offer him a deal: rot in jail or join Blackwatch. He would choose the latter. He would also go on to recruit geneticist Moira O'Dearin, who would later conduct genetic testing on Reyes, allowing him the ability to manipulate his form. After an operation in Hanamura, Japan, he would also save and recruit Genji Shimada. As time went on, he would remain on good terms with the rest of the Overwatch team, but tension was beginning to rise between Reyes and Morrison, due to Reyes acting out of his own will, being reckless, and differences in their leadership styles. Later, Talon would show up on the radar of Overwatch. Reyes had been at Rome's new Blackwatch facility alongside Gerard Lacroix and Cassidy. Lacroix would brief the two on a Talon arms dealer with links to the Italian government, and who was also behind a recent attack on the Overwatch facilities in Oslo. Cassidy was all for a road trip to get Antonio, but Lacroix wanted to play the long game in bringing him to justice due to his long line of connections. Reyes agreed, and he and Cassidy would leave the facility. Shortly afterwards, the building was brought down by an explosion set by a Talon agent. Reyes and Cole would rush back to help anyone they could and would find Lacroix among the rubble. Lacroix would be sent to a hospital where Dr. Ziegler would inform Reyes that he would survive and make a full recovery. Reyes wanted to go after Antonio immediately, but Morrison disagreed, as it would violate Italy's sovereignty and would hurt Overwatch's public relations in the long run. Reyes saw that doing it by the book wouldn't work, with Antonio having too many strong connections. Ultimately, Morrison would leave the decision to Reyes, but urged him to think, would it help Overwatch keep the world safe in the long run? Blackwatch played by its own rules, and they were going to get Antonio. The Rialto mission would be the most pivotal turning point in Reyes' life. As the mission went along, Reyes would make a crucial decision and kill Antonio on the spot, after infiltrating the compound with Cassidy, Moira, and Genji. To the disdain of Cassidy, Reyes stood by his decision. After extracting successfully, he would be debriefed by Morrison, Anna, and Lacroix, now recovered from his wounds.
Whatever happened to plausible deniability?
Little late for that. Tell me what actually happened.
Morrison was furious and demanded to know what exactly happened. Gabriel would give him a little cheek, but otherwise recount the whole mission. The attack had been reported in the press, and Blackwatch was known to the whole world. Reyes stood by his decision, and he and the other members of the strike team were put under suspension. Cassidy would reflect on this and wonder
if that's where it all started to go wrong.
Later on, after the apprehension of Doomfist, Reyes would see some satisfaction in seeing Doomfist arrested, but Doomfist himself didn't mind one bit. He would ask Reyes the question of what he had accomplished in his life as a police officer, a soldier, an Overwatch agent. Reyes couldn't respond. Doomfist would also ask, what was Reyes truly protecting? Reyes could not answer this either, but Doomfist could see it in his eyes, that Reyes was realizing nothing he worked for had fixed the broken system of the world. Not even Overwatch. Unbeknownst to everyone, Doomfist had laid the foundations for a shadow to take over Reyes, for the Reaper to rise. Overwatch would soon meet its end. With an explosion that destroyed Overwatch Swiss headquarters, Morrison and Reyes were killed in the blast. The UN ruled it as an accident, but in truth, it was a battle that caused the disaster, with Reyes and Morrison fighting each other after Reyes led a rebellion against Morrison's leadership. Moira would find Reyes after the blast. He had barely survived, and now Moira was pumping Reyes full of a mix of chemicals to keep him alive. It was similar to the treatment he had gotten before to be able to manipulate his form. 1 minute, he was flesh and bone, and the next, a thick black smoke. Aware of every single molecule, he would scream internally at the horror of it all. But in his mind, he was somewhat intrigued by it, feeling it was making him stronger. He was now in a constant state of agony, as his body would deteriorate and regenerate rapidly. But thanks to Moira, he was alive. He denied that Morrison had died in the blast, and now he was on a crusade to find him and finish what he had started. A year after the end of Overwatch, he would join Talon. He felt uneasy doing this, but agreed with Doomfist's vision and saw it as a spearhead to building a new world. Doomfist, from prison, would send Reaper on the mission to retrieve Sebring the Kuiper alongside Sombra. The two did not get along due to them both clashing in methodology, Sombra being unpredictable and unorthodox, and Reaper having military training. During the mission, they would break in and kill any guard who opposed them. Upon finding Sebring, Sombra and Reaper would turn on each other before being broken up by Widowmaker, who had a team of Talon soldiers with her. Upon leaving the facility, he would pass the bodies of the US soldiers who he had killed and realized he had now crossed the line. He was no better than the terrorists he tried to be nothing like. Sombra and Widowmaker mocked him as they boarded their dropship and said he'd find his place in Talon. The embers of Gabriel Reyes were going out, and the flames of the Reaper were beginning to rage. Later on, Reaper would infiltrate Watchpoint Gibraltar to download the known locations of Overwatch agents. He would go in with a squad of Talon soldiers, and they would deal with Winston, while Reaper got the information. Winston would best the soldiers, forcing Reaper to get involved himself, and he would temporarily get the better of the gorilla and start to mock him. Winston would then use his shield generator to stun Reaper temporarily and vaporize him with his Tesla cannon.
I'm not a monkey. I'm a scientist.
Reaper's body was destroyed, but ultimately he would return in a cloud of black smoke. Although he wasn't able to get all locations, he managed to get a few, leading him to neutralize a number of Overwatch agents. Later, he and Widowmaker would try to steal the Doomfist Gauntlet from the Overwatch Museum, but was ultimately stopped by Winston and Tracer, and a nasty punch from this guy. Further down the line, he would find Jack Morrison and Anna in Egypt, and attempt to finish what he had started, but ultimately was bested by the pair. He would remain in Egypt for a little and lead a Talon assault at the Temple of Anubis. They would be fought back by Helix forces as well as Anna and Morrison. He would head for Europe after this. Next, he and Widowmaker would join with Sombra to assassinate Katya Volskaya, but due to Sombra sabotaging the mission, she would get away. Reaper was building suspicion on Sombra due to this, and perhaps knew of the truth of what had happened. Later, he would gain access to a Helix maximum security prison and break Doomfist out. Now, he still works with Talon to help Doomfist bring about his new world order. Now, on the outside, Reaper might just seem like your typically edgy, scary guy. But what I love about him is he's more than just that. He's a man who's been put down time and time again, and everything he's ever worked for to try and fix has been neglected by the ones who were meant to be helping. He was neglected by the ones who were meant to be helping. The police force failed to bring down any of the crime rate, and Overwatch was too restricted, had to follow rules, maintain public relations to do any real good. He was a man who wanted to see the world change for the better. But no matter what he did, no matter how hard he tried, it would always fight against him. A man who had been broken mentally since the death of his parents due to military operations that he was part of. Something he didn't agree with but was forced to partake in. He was forced to watch the evil of the world rise and profit while he was restrained to the laws and rules by the organizations he worked for. And rising tensions between someone who he called his friend due to their differences in leadership and methodology would only lead to disaster. But when Doomfist came along and spoke those words to him, it opened his eyes to the reality that the world only cares for the strong. Him agreeing with Doomfist's ideas and vision of a new world brought him down a path to taking matters into his own hands. It opened his mind to the realization that his code of honor and justice meant nothing, and the only thing the world respected was violence. And that was the code he was going to live by now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know a lot of people have been asking for Reaper for quite a bit now, and I hope you really did enjoy this video. It would mean the world for me if you could go check out the other videos in the playlist. Genji, Reinhardt, Ramatra, Sigma, with plenty more to come. I try to upload these videos every week on Friday, so hit the subscribe button to be notified when they go up. And I will have a smaller video releasing during the week about Hazard, Overwatch 2's latest hero. If you want to support the channel further, do consider becoming a member. Get yourself a nice little badge next to your name with more perks to come, such as special access to a Discord server. Keep an eye on the community tab to be notified when that Discord server is made. But yeah, the support for these videos has been incredible, and I can't thank you guys enough. Let me know who you want to see next. I love you. And this was the rise and fall of Gabriel Reyes, Reaper.